November. A coffee shop full of people who all think they know how this ends. A little girl in a yellow raincoat closes her eyes, starts counting 1. The man holding her doesn't move, doesn't flinch. 3 men in front of him. One already running his mouth about lawyers, about taking the child, about how people like this father don't belong in places like this. 2. The loudest man reaches out and shoves. 4 seconds, that's all it takes. By the time the little girl opens her eyes at 10, 3 grown men are on the floor. The cafe is silent. Not one person reaches for a phone because what they just watched wasn't a fight. It was something else entirely. And the woman in the corner booth who saw every second of it, she isn't calling the police. She's already deciding what to offer him. He was the most dangerous man in the room. Nobody knew it, not the barista. Not the businessmen with their laptops and their half-finished espressos. Not the woman in the corner booth who was watching everything with the quiet attention of someone used to being the most important person in any space she entered. Nobody knew, except maybe the little girl in the yellow raincoat sitting across from him, eating blueberry muffin pieces in the specific order she had decided was correct. She didn't know the way adults knew things. She knew it the way children knew things about their fathers. Bone deep, without language. His name was Colt Mercer. He was 38 years old. He had a scar along his jaw that traced the line from below his ear to the edge of his chin, thin and silver and permanent. He had hands that were calloused from work he had taken up, because it kept him occupied and because it asked nothing of him beyond showing up with the right tools. He had spent 12 years in places that had no names in any public document. Now he fixed pipes, and on Tuesday mornings he brought his daughter to a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue, and he let himself sit still for 1 hour without cataloging everything that needed to be done. That was the deal he had made with himself. 1 hour, 1 table, 2 hot chocolates, that was enough, until it wasn't. He felt it before he opened his eyes, that low pull in his chest. Not grief exactly, something quieter, something that had no clean name after 2 years of trying to find one. He lay still for 3 minutes, that was the rule. 3 minutes, then up. Because Ren needed breakfast. Because the building's pipes were making that sound again. Because the world did not pause for a man who needed it to. He swung his legs off the mattress and sat at the edge. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, which Ren had claimed entirely, her drawings covering every surface, her boots parked by the radiator. Colt slept on a pull-out sofa in the living room and had been doing so for 8 months without mentioning it to anyone. The ceiling had a water stain he refused to look at directly. The kitchen faucet dripped, the front door stuck when it rained. It rained a lot in Chicago in November. He stood, rolled his neck, once, twice, put coffee on, put eggs on. Cut 2 pieces of bread from the end of the loaf because those were the ones Ren refused to eat, and they would go to waste otherwise. He was halfway through the eggs when he heard her, small feet on the floor. The sound of someone who had not yet learned to move quietly, who had no reason to. Ren appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing a purple sweatshirt 2 sizes too big and 1 sock. She looked at him with the expression of someone 20 seconds awake and already forming opinions. "We're going today, right? Not a question." "We're going," he said. She climbed up onto the kitchen chair and propped her chin in both hands, watching him cook the way she always did, like she was supervising, like she was running quality control on the scrambled eggs. "Can I get the hot chocolate with the marshmallows?" "Yes. The big ones, Ren. The medium ones." "Sure." She nodded like she had won something. Maybe she had. He slid the eggs onto her plate and cut her toast into triangles the way Claire used to do, and he did not think about that. He thought about the creak in the 3rd floorboard instead, and whether he could fix it this afternoon between jobs, 2 jobs lined up, a busted water heater on Kedzie, a leaking sink in Pilsen. Not glamorous, not the kind of work that accumulated into anything. But it was work he could do with his hands, work with clear outcomes, work that did not require him to make a single decision that affected another human being's survival. That mattered more than he could explain to anyone. Ren ate with focused efficiency, finished her eggs, drank half her juice. Then she climbed down and disappeared toward the bedroom, and he heard the sound of a small person searching for something with increasing urgency. He washed the pan, the footsteps slowed. A pause, then, "Baba." She only called him that when she found something she wasn't sure about. He turned off the water. She was standing in the kitchen doorway again. In her hand she held his old service jacket, the grey one he kept on the hook by the door. She had pulled it down, probably looking for her missing sock in the pockets. She did this regularly, like his jacket was a storage unit for lost items. She had found the wrong pocket, not the sock, the coin. He crossed the kitchen in 4 steps and took the jacket from her gently. The medallion was still in the inner pocket. That small, heavy disc of bronze he had moved from jacket to jacket for 2 years without ever taking it out and looking at it directly. He could feel the weight of it through the fabric. He always could. Ren was watching him with those dark, patient eyes. "What is that?" she said. "Nothing. It's not nothing. It's heavy." He put the jacket back on the hook. He did not remove the coin. "Can I see it?" No, she considered this. She was not a child who accepted answers without conducting a brief internal investigation first. "Is it a medal?" she said. He looked at her. "Like for being brave," she continued. "At school they give out medals sometimes. When you do something good, something moved through him." He let it pass. "Baba," she stepped toward him. "Are you a hero?" The question landed the way it always did. Quiet, unavoidable. He crouched down to her level. "No," he said. "I'm just your dad." She looked at him for a long moment, deciding something. He did not know what. He never knew exactly what happened behind those eyes. Then she held up her foot. "I can't find my other sock," she said. He found it behind the radiator. They left at 7:52. The rain had started overnight and was still going. The kind of thin, relentless November rain that did not commit to being dramatic, just persisted. Ren wore the yellow raincoat, the one that swallowed her. She had worn it every day since September and showed no signs of reconsidering. Colt walked with his hands in his pockets. He did not own an umbrella. He had owned one briefly and left it on a bus, and had not replaced it because umbrellas felt like an optimism he couldn't sustain. Meridian Roast was 4 blocks away. It was the kind of place that had no business being in this neighborhood, technically. Except that the neighborhood had changed while he was gone and then changed again after he came back. And now there were 3 coffee shops within 6 blocks that charged $9 for something served in a handleless ceramic cup. Claire had loved this one. She had loved the windows. The morning light when it was sunny, which it was not today. She had loved the corner booth in the back left, the one with the cracked leather seat the owners had never gotten around to replacing. She had sat there 3 mornings a week during the 2 years she worked downtown, before everything. They had their table. It was the only place that still held her shape. Colt pushed through the door and warmth arrived immediately. Coffee, something baking, the low sound of conversation, and the steamer and a Tuesday morning moving at full speed. Ren reached up and took his hand, not from fear, from habit. His hand was available, she took it. He found the booth. He let her slide in first, and she pressed her face against the cold window glass and watched the rain-soaked street with the contentment of someone who had reached her destination. He sat across from her, ordered 2 hot chocolates, medium marshmallows, a black coffee. He pulled a blueberry muffin from his jacket pocket. From the bakery, 2 blocks from their building, wrapped in a paper bag. Meridian Roast charged $4.50 for a muffin, and he had principles. He unwrapped it and began pulling it apart. Small pieces. Ren turned from the window. "The blueberries first," she said. "I know. You always forget. I've never forgotten once." She narrowed her eyes. Then she accepted the piece he offered and placed a blueberry in her mouth with the deliberation of a small scientist running a trial. He watched her. He let himself do that on Tuesdays. Just watch her without the list running in the background. Without the survival arithmetic that occupied him every other day. He was watching his daughter eat a muffin in a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning. It was enough. He almost did not notice the woman in the corner booth. Almost. He had clocked her when they walked in. Quick automatic sweep, height, position, posture, hands. 20-year habit, he couldn't turn it off. He had stopped trying. Woman, early to mid-40s, alone, back to the wall, facing the door. Good table discipline, which almost no civilian ever had without knowing they had it. Dark coat, leather portfolio open in front of her, but she wasn't reading it. She was watching the room with the stillness of someone who was always the most important person present, and had been for long enough that it had stopped feeling like anything. He noted all of this in 2 seconds and moved on. He didn't think about her again until Gareth Dunn walked through the door. The shift was immediate. Colt felt it before he registered why. A change in the room's atmosphere. Not just volume but texture, the specific texture of a person who had never once considered that the space he occupied might also belong to someone else. The man was late 40s, expensive suit, custom fitted, cufflinks, a watch worth more than Colt's truck. He had the look of someone who had been attractive in his 30s and was working hard against the evidence that time continued without his consent. He was on his phone before the door closed. I don't care what legal says loud. Not phone loud, room loud, a choice. The numbers need to be clean before the audit window closes. That's your problem, not mine. A pause, a contemptuous exhale. Then make them stop asking questions. That's literally what I pay you for. Several people turned to look. He didn't notice. He moved toward the counter, still talking, gesturing with his free hand, his elbow swinging wide. His path through the room, the path of a man who had never had to navigate around anyone, because the world had always, in his experience, moved first. He grabbed his coffee without looking at the barista. A young woman who flinched at the abruptness. No thank you. Already turning, still talking, still moving, 3 tables away too. He turned his head to check his phone, took one more long stride, and his hip connected with the edge of their table with the full momentum of a man who had not been watching where he was going at all. The coffee went, not a splash, a wave. Colt was out of his seat before the cup finished falling. Pure reflex. He pulled Ren back against his chest, turning her away from the liquid, checking her hands, her face, her coat. The muffin was destroyed. The coloring book she had placed at the corner of the table was soaked through. Hot coffee ran across the wood and pieces of the broken ceramic mug scattered across the tile. Ren made a small sound of shock. Hey, Colt said, low and level, look at me. Did it touch you, my picture, she said, small voice. The edges of it crumpling. Did it burn you? No, but my. Okay. He turned to the man, whose was looking at his shoes. One drop of coffee had caught the toe of his left dress shoe. One drop. He stared at it with the expression of someone witnessing a crime. Are you serious right now? Not a question. Not yet. Colt met his eyes. You walked into our table. My daughter almost got burned. The man looked at him, really looked. Took in the work jacket, the worn jeans, the scuffed boots, the scar along the jaw. And something shifted in his face. That specific recalibration certain people performed automatically when they decided they were looking at someone beneath them. Your chair was sticking out, the man said. It wasn't. I watched you push it back when you sat down. You've been taking up the whole walkway. That's not what happened. Are you calling me a liar? I'm telling you what happened. The man laughed. Short, dismissive. Look. He gestured broadly at Colt's general appearance. I need you to pay for the dry cleaning on this suit, and honestly you should apologize and move on before this gets worse for you. Colt looked at him. I'm not going to do that, he said. The temperature changed. The man's face did what faces did when they had never been told no by someone they had already decided couldn't say it. A small involuntary tightening, a reconfiguration from dismissive to something with an edge. Do you know who I am? He said. I don't, Gareth Dunn. VP of Acquisitions, Carver Financial. He said it the way people said things when the words themselves were supposed to accomplish something. My company's legal team handles situations like this before breakfast, so I'm doing you a genuine favor by giving you the option to just apologize to my daughter, Colt said. Silence, not a long silence, maybe 2 seconds. But everyone in the vicinity felt the quality of it shift. Gareth Dunn looked down at Ren, 6 years old, yellow raincoat, holding a ruined coloring book against her chest, looking up at him with wide, unafraid eyes. She was her father's daughter, and her father did not look afraid of things. Something happened in Gareth's face. Not remorse, not even close to remorse, something uglier than that. The particular cruelty, a person who had located a pressure point and decided to press it. People like you, he said, and he was looking at Colt again, should not be bringing kids into places like this. This is a professional establishment. I come here for meetings. I don't come here to step around some contractor's table and listen to a kid cry. She's not crying, Colt said. She's about to. You need to stop talking. Or what? Gareth leaned in slightly. Or what exactly? You going to do something in front of your kid? In a coffee shop full of witnesses, he looked around, playing to the room now, performing for an audience that was already horrified by him. Somebody get the manager, Gareth said loudly. This guy's been harassing me. Nobody's harassing you, a woman at the next table quietly. Stay out of it, he snapped. Colt was very still. Not the still of calm, the still of a locked door. something that required effort to maintain. He ran the list, automatic and fast. Ren is safe, no immediate physical threat to her. The man is loud is ego, not danger. 2 exits. His posture is aggressive but untrained. He expects submission or emotion. Give him neither. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. I'm going to take my daughter and we're going to leave, Colt said. And you're going to let us do that. He reached down and picked Ren up, settling her on his left hip. She tucked her face against his neck without being asked. He turned toward the door. Hey, Gareth's voice, different now, higher, sharper, losing the thread of itself. I didn't give you permission to walk away. We're not done here. He stepped sideways, into the aisle. Directly into Colt's path, the room went quiet. In the corner booth, the woman in the dark coat had not moved, had not reached for her phone. She was watching with the focused, calibrated attention of someone who already understood what kind of situation this was and was determining how it would resolve. Colt looked at the man blocking his path. Move, he said. 1 word, apologize, Gareth said. On your knees. Right here. Tell this room you were rude to me. Pay for the dry cleaning. And maybe I'll consider letting you leave with whatever dignity you still have, which from where I'm standing isn't a great deal. The 2 men who had entered the cafe 3 minutes ago were now positioned behind Gareth. Colt had tracked them arriving, catalogued them. Both large, both wearing the posture of men who believed their size was an argument. Standing at Gareth's shoulders like punctuation. This is your last chance, Gareth said. He was smiling. That was the thing Colt would remember. That the man was smiling. Touch me, Gareth said, and I will have that little girl taken away from you so fast. He reached out and shoved Colt's right shoulder, and Ren pressed her face into his neck and squeezed her eyes shut and started to count. 1 very quiet. The way Colt had taught her when she was 4 and the thunderstorms were bad. Close your eyes. Count to 10. By 10, the worst part is always over. She believed him. He had always been careful to make sure that was true. What happened next took 4 seconds. Colt did not shout, did not wind up, did not lose a single degree of the focus that ran beneath everything. He simply moved. His right hand came up and trapped Gareth's wrist as it pulled back from the shove. 1 motion. Continuous. The entry was inside Gareth's guard before Gareth's nervous system had finished processing that contact had occurred. Colt turned the wrist inward and downward with a short rotation, applying pressure in a direction that joint did not travel. And Gareth's shoulder dislocated with a sound like a knuckle popping at triple volume. The man's knees buckled without him intending it, because that was what bodies did when that happened to them. 2. The larger of the 2 men behind Gareth made his decision in the wrong second. He lunged, haymaker, wide, committed. Colt leaned back 4 inches, the fist grazing the air near his cheek, and brought his right forearm down across the back of the man's neck as momentum carried him forward. Precise location, maximum effect. The man folded and did not get up. 3. The second man reached into his coat. Colt read the motion before it completed, closed the distance in 1 step, open palm strike under the jaw. The sound was definitive. The man's knees unlocked. Colt hooked his leg and took him to the floor in a controlled descent. He landed. He stayed. 4. Ren kept counting. 2, she said softly, into his shoulder. 3. The room was completely still. The barista had both hands flat on the counter. A man near the window had stopped with his coffee cup halfway to his mouth and had not resumed. No one reached for a phone. No one moved. They were held in place by the sheer economy of what they had just witnessed. Not a brawl, not a scene, a disassembly. Colt stood at the center of it. He had not broken a sweat. His breathing had not changed. He adjusted Ren on his hip and put 1 hand against the back of her head and held it there. She was still counting. Eyes still closed on the floor. Gareth found his voice. Somewhere between a scream and a gasp, "You broke my arm. Your shoulder is dislocated," Colt said. He looked down at him without heat. "Not broken. The pain peaks in about 2 minutes. Don't try to rotate it. If you do, you'll tear the rotator cuff. That's a surgery you don't want." Gareth stared up at him. The performance had drained entirely from his face. What was there instead was something purer and less rehearsed. The fear of a man who had just understood, for the first time in his adult life, that his money had a radius and he had stepped outside it. "You're going to prison," Gareth said, tears tracking down now. Expensive suit wrecked with coffee and tile. "You're done. That kid is going into the system." Colt looked at him. Then a voice came from behind him, clear, unhurried, carrying the quiet authority of someone who had never once needed volume to command a room. "No," the voice said. He isn't. 4, Ren said it. Then 5, the woman from the corner booth was standing. She moved the way certain people moved when they had spent decades in rooms where every step carried weight. Measured, precise. She had left her portfolio on the table and held nothing. She walked to the center of the room and stopped 3 feet from Colt, looked at him, then at the floor, then at the cafe door as the first red and blue light began strobing through the window glass. She looked at him, he looked at her. She had dark eyes, with something sharp and slightly tired behind them. The kind that processed information quickly and wasted none of it. "Follow my lead," she said. Quiet enough that only he caught it. "I promise this works." He said nothing. The door burst open. 4 officers entered with the controlled urgency of people who did not yet have a clear picture of what they were walking into. The woman turned toward them. "Officers." Her voice took over the room the way a firm hand takes a steering wheel. Not raised, not performed, just settled and certain and beyond the question of whether it should be there. "My name is Sloan Hale. I'm the CEO of Hale Capital Group. I hold the lease on this building through my investment subsidiary." She produced a card case from her coat, opened it, held up her credentials. "I witnessed this incident from beginning to end. These 3 men," she indicated Gareth and the 2 on the floor, "initiated a physical assault against my head of executive security while he was on duty with his minor child. He responded to neutralize the threat." Nothing more. She glanced at Colt for less than a second. He held the look, gave nothing back. "I have my private security team's footage documenting the incident from the moment these men entered the building," Sloan continued. "The aggressor with the dislocated shoulder is Gareth Dunn, VP of Acquisitions at Carver Financial, which as of this morning is under new ownership. My ownership," she turned back to the lead officer. "I expect all 3 to be charged with assault, battery, and child endangerment. I'm happy to provide the footage immediately." The lead officer looked at her, looked at the men on the floor, looked at Colt standing in the center of all of it with a 6-year-old on his hip. He was a man who had seen a great deal, 20+ years in his posture. He was reading the room the way experienced officers read rooms, not just the obvious surfaces but the edges, the consistency, the weight of what was being said against what the physical evidence showed. He looked at Gareth, still weeping on the tile. He looked at Ren. He looked at Sloan Hale with the expression of a man who recognized someone it would be inadvisable to dismiss. "Get him up," he said to his team, meaning Gareth. "And get medical for these 2. Gareth opened his mouth. "You have the right to remain silent," the detective said, "which I strongly suggest you exercise immediately." 6, 7, 9, 10 Ren finished on an exhale. She lifted her head. She looked around at the officers, the broken ceramic, the 2 men still on the floor. Then she looked at the woman standing 3 feet away, who had said the words that had stopped everything. She studied her with the frank assessment of a 6-year-old who had decided something. "Are you a princess?" Ren said. Sloan looked at her. Something crossed her face. Not a performance of warmth. The real thing, unguarded, arriving before she could decide whether to allow it. "No," she said. "I'm just a woman who was in the right place." She looked at Colt. He was looking back at her with the expression he gave everything that required evaluation before trust. Not gratitude yet. Not certainty. Something more careful than either of those things. "My car is in the loading zone out back," she said. "Low, steady. The press monitors police bands. They'll have cameras here in under 3 minutes. If you want to keep your daughter out of that, you need to come with me right now." He looked at Ren. He looked at the door. He looked at Sloan Hale, who was not pushing, not performing, not doing anything except presenting a clear option and waiting for him to take it or leave it. He gave one small nod. They went out the back. The SUV was black and armored, and when the doors closed, the sirens outside became a rumor. Ren's eyes went enormous. "Are we in a spaceship?" she whispered. Colt let out a breath that felt like it had been waiting a long time. "Something like that," he said. He settled Ren onto the wide seat and watched her reach out and touch the leather with one careful finger. The way she tested things she wasn't sure were real. He sat across from her. Sloan took the far end of the bench and said nothing. She poured water from the console and held it out to him without asking. He took it. "I don't work for you," he said. "You do as of approximately 8 this morning," she said. "The paperwork took 12 minutes to draft. I'm very efficient. That's not how employment works. I told a police officer you were my head of executive security. At that point, it became a choice between making it true or committing perjury. I prefer clean solutions. He looked at her. She held his gaze without effort, not performing confidence, simply having it, the way some people had it, visible in how they occupied a chair. You knew who I was, he said. Not a question. She did not answer immediately. She looked out the tinted window at the streets moving past. Then she looked back at him with those sharp, tired eyes. I know enough, she said. He felt the shape of something he couldn't fully see yet, the outline of a larger thing. Who are you? He said. Sloan Hale. Hale Capital Group. We acquire underperforming companies and restructure them. That's what you do, not who you are. She held the look a moment longer than necessary. No, she said. It isn't. Ren had fallen asleep against his arm. Somewhere in the shift from the chaos of the cafe to the stillness of the car, she had simply decided she'd taken in enough information for one morning. She was warm and heavy against his side, and he did not move. I'm offering you a position, Sloan said. 400,000 a year. Full medical coverage for your daughter. A schedule that puts you home by 6 every evening. No travel, no overseas assignments. She paused. No black sites, Mr. Mercer. Something in those last 3 words. The precision of them. He looked at her. No, he said. You haven't heard? No, he said again. She accepted this without visible reaction. Did not recalibrate. Did not push. Simply sat with the word in the space between them and let it be there. He looked out the window. The city moved at its own pace. People with umbrellas and briefcases, delivery trucks. A kid on a bike running a red light with total commitment. All of it indifferent to the weight of a Tuesday in November. He thought about the bills on the kitchen table. Stacked white envelopes, some with Claire's name still on them. Medical debt on a payment plan that had 7 more years if nothing went wrong. Something always went wrong. He thought about Ren's school shoes. Half a size too small for 6 weeks. He kept meaning to get to the store. The weeks kept filling up with other things. He looked at his daughter asleep against his arm. He thought about 7 more years. He looked at Sloan Hale. One condition, he said. She waited. Ren doesn't get pulled into any of this. Whatever you do, whatever this actually is, my daughter stays outside it, completely, always. Sloan looked at him. Agreed, she said. No qualification, no pause to consider it. The word landing flat and clean. He looked out the window again. He looked at his hands. He thought, this is probably a mistake. He thought, so were most of the things that kept people alive. He reached into his jacket pocket. Felt the weight of the coin without taking it out. Just its heft. The weight of a thing that had no comfortable resting place anywhere. I'll call you tonight, he said. You don't have my number. You know who I am, he said. You'll find me first. She almost smiled. He caught the edge of it before it disappeared. The car pulled to the curb 2 blocks from his building. He stepped out into the rain with Ren drowsy on his shoulder, her weight solid and real. Her yellow raincoat the brightest thing on the wet grey street. He did not look back. He walked the 2 blocks. Put Ren down for a nap, stood in the kitchen and looked at the bills, picked up his phone. A number had appeared in his missed calls while they were in the car. Of course it had. Of course she had already moved. It rang once. I have one more condition, he said. Name it. I need to understand what I'm actually walking into. Not the title. The real thing. A pause. Shorter than he expected. Come to the office tomorrow morning, Sloan Hale said. I'll tell you everything. He stood in the kitchen a long time after she hung up. He took the coin out of his pocket. He had done it without realizing. It sat in the center of his palm, dull and heavy, given to him for something he had never found the right words to explain to anyone who hadn't been there. He looked at it. He thought about Ren's question from that morning. Are you a hero? No, I'm just your dad. He set the coin on the counter, turned off the kitchen light. He was going to need better shoes. He bought the shoes on Wednesday. Nothing expensive. Dark leather. A pair that would not draw attention in the kind of rooms he was about to start standing in. He spent 11 minutes in the store deciding if he was the kind of man who bought shoes like this now, and then he bought them because the alternative was showing up to Sloan Hale's office in work boots. And he had made a decision, and he did not unmake decisions. He did not tell Ren where he was going the next morning. He told her he had a new job. She asked if he still had to fix pipes. He said not anymore. She thought about this with the full weight of her attention, the way she approached most things that required an opinion. Do you get to wear a suit? She said. Probably. Like a spy, not exactly, but kind of. He looked at her. Kind of, he said. She seemed satisfied. She went back to her drawing. He stood in the doorway watching her color something that was either a horse or a very large dog, and he felt the specific feeling of a man standing at a threshold he cannot walk back through. He walked through it anyway. That was all he had ever known how to do. Hale Capital Group occupied the top 4 floors of a glass tower on Michigan Avenue. He knew this because he had spent the previous evening learning everything publicly available about the company, the woman who ran it, and the building's security layout. Not from suspicion, from habit, he did not walk into spaces without knowing the exits. The lobby had 3 security checkpoints and a front desk staffed by 2 people who were clearly more than front desk staff. He clocked the camera positions in 8 seconds. Noted 2 men in civilian clothes near the elevator bank, watching the entrance without appearing to watch it. Good positioning, decent spacing. They had been tracking him from half a block out. He gave his name at the desk. They were expecting him. The elevator required a key card. A receptionist escorted him to the 41st floor without speaking, which he respected. People who understood their job and did it quietly were his preferred kind of people. The 41st floor was glass and clean lines, and the kind of deliberate minimalism that cost serious money to achieve. He was shown to a conference room and left with a cup of coffee that appeared without him asking for it, which meant someone had noted what he ordered at Meridian Roast, which meant someone had been paying attention to him for longer than 2 days. He sat with that. Sloane came in 7 minutes later, dressed differently than she had been at the cafe, less neutral. A dark jacket cut with precision, the kind that communicated authority without announcing it. Hair pulled back, she carried nothing. No portfolio, no tablet, no prop of any kind. Just herself, which he was beginning to understand was the only thing she ever needed. She sat across from him. She noticed the coffee he had brought sitting beside the cup already on the table in front of him. Said nothing about the redundancy. "You said you'd tell me everything," he said. "I will." Then start, she did. Sloane Hale had built Hale Capital from the inside out and from the ground up, and from the wreckage of a marriage that had ended when the company was 14 months old and 70% in debt. Her ex-husband had not believed the company would survive. He had said so plainly, without particular cruelty, which was almost worse than if there had been cruelty. He had packed efficiently, moved to their house in Scottsdale, and filed the papers 3 weeks later. She had a son who was 14 at the time, Owen, 22 now, 2nd year of law school. He had his mother's eyes and none of her patience for anything that wasted time. She had taken the debt and the company, and her son and she had worked. That was the whole story, reduced to its frame. She had worked with a focus that others found alarming and that she had found simply necessary, because the alternative was collapse, and collapse was not something she was built for. By the time Owen was 17, Hale Capital was solvent. By the time he turned 18, it was growing. Now it held a valuation north of $14 billion, offices in 4 cities, and a client list that included some of the largest institutional funds in the country. 3 weeks ago, an anonymous threat arrived through her executive assistant's personal email, not the company's server, the personal account, which meant whoever sent it knew exactly who to route through. The message was 4 words: "Stop the Carver deal." She had not stopped the Carver deal. 2 days later, a second message. This one with an attachment. A photograph of Owen leaving his law school building, taken from close range. Someone had known his schedule. She had not told Owen. She had not called the police. She had started looking for Colt Mercer. He listened to all of it without moving, without speaking. He sat with his coffee in front of him, hands on the table, and let her talk until she stopped. Then he said, "How did you find me?" She held his gaze. "That's the part you need to hear," she said. She had a name, Conrad Voss, 58 years old. No official title anywhere, no company registered under his name, no public presence of any kind. What he had instead was a network of investments buried under holding companies, buried under shell entities that required a forensic accountant, and roughly 400 hours to fully untangle, which was exactly what Sloane's team had spent the past 6 months doing. Voss was the silent capital behind Carver Financial. Had been for 11 years, Carver had not begun as an illegitimate operation, or rather, it had started as one thing and become another through a series of small decisions that each seemed defensible in isolation. What it had become, across 11 years under Voss's invisible management, was a vehicle A structure for moving money through channels that could not withstand examination. Sloane's acquisition of Carver would make those channels examinable. That was Voss's problem. He doesn't want you to buy the company, Colt said. He wants to stop me, she said. Specifically, the acquisition is the mechanism. I'm the obstacle. Colt looked at the table. He was already running the geometry, the shape of the threat, the angles of access, the methodology of the escalation. Anonymous messages first, then physical surveillance of a family member. Then what? That was always the question with men like this. Then what? You said you looked for me, he said. Why me specifically? Sloane was quiet for a moment. Because Voss has a history, she said. Not a public one, but a clear pattern if you're willing to look at it carefully. 3 years ago, a federal auditor named Greta Fowler was investigating a fund with documented ties to Voss's network. She was killed in a hit-and-run in Indianapolis. Driver never identified. Case still open. She paused. The man I need is not a man who looks like a bodyguard. It's a man who looks like nothing at all. Until he needs to look like something else. He understood that, and you thought, that was me, he said. I knew it was you. How? Another pause. This one longer. A colleague of mine, she said. Someone working in risk management consulting. He has access to certain professional networks. He flagged your name in connection with a specific skill set and a current situation. She kept the language careful, deliberately general. The language of someone giving information without giving all of it. Colt looked at her steadily. Who, he said. She held his gaze. Reed Nolan, she said, and there it was. He knew the name. Of course he knew the name. Reed Nolan, 41 years old, former Delta, same unit, same rotation cycle, 3 tours running parallel. A man who read a room the way a pilot read weather, instinctively, continuously, always preparing for the change before it arrived. For 12 years, Nolan had been the person Colt trusted most in any situation that required trust. Then they were both out. Different years, different reasons. And the distance between them had grown the way distance grew between soldiers who came home and discovered that home had become a concept with unclear geography. He had not spoken to Reed Nolan in 16 months. He kept his face level. I see, he said. He spoke well of you, Sloane said. Good to know you don't seem surprised I'm not. She studied him, looking for what was underneath the surface. He did not let her find it. Not yet, so you took his recommendation, Colt said. I took his assessment. There's a distinction. What was his assessment? That you were the best he had ever worked alongside. And that you were drowning. The word arrived quietly, without drama. But it arrived fully. He looked at the window. The city beyond, gray and moving, drowning. Not wrong, not entirely wrong. What do you need from me specifically, he said. And they got to work. What she needed was presence. Constant, intelligent, invisible presence. Not the performance of security her previous team had provided. Big men in obvious positions who made the building feel defended while missing every actual angle of vulnerability. She needed someone who read the room before the room knew it was being read. He accepted the terms. She walked him through the current threat assessment, the Carver acquisition timeline, the known communication channels, the personnel who had access to her calendar and her schedule. He listened and asked 2 questions, both precise, both about access points she had not thought to flag. She noted the questions without comment. He started the following morning. What he found in the first week, the East Corridor camera on the 41st floor had a 12-second blind spot during its rotation cycle. He reported this to her IT team on day 3, fixed day 4. Her previous security chief had been in place for 8 months and had never identified it. The building's loading dock used a key card system with a maintenance override that had not been updated since installation. He flagged it on day 2, a small vulnerability, the kind that looked inconsequential until the moment it wasn't. Her calendar was accessible to a support team of 11 people. He requested full background files on all 11. They arrived 3 days later. One name gave him pause. He placed a flag on it. He did not act. He watched. Watching was what he did best, what the years had made him very, very good at. Sloane ran meetings the way she ran everything, with a clarity and efficiency that left no room for ambiguity and no tolerance for anything wasted. He stood at the back of the conference room during 3 of them in the first week, watching the people around the table respond to her. The ones who were afraid of her, the ones who respected her, the ones who performed respect while running a different calculation beneath it. He catalogued all of them, After the third meeting, she walked past him on the way out and said, without turning her head, "You're staring at my team like you're drawing up a plan. I'm assessing." The word I used was staring. I was being polite. She almost stopped walking. Almost, she kept going. Good. She didn't break stride for small provocations. Useful to know. He dropped Ren at school each morning, picked her up at 5:45, home by 6:15. Every day, this was the deal. He kept it without being reminded. He kept it because it mattered and because Ren needed the continuity, and because he had spent 12 years disappearing into places he could not talk about, and he would not do that again. Not for any salary, not for any contract. But he kept it also because Sloane had kept her side of it without being asked once. That mattered, more than he had expected it to. Ren had opinions about the suit. She expressed them every morning when he put it on. The opinions were largely favorable. She had decided he looked like someone from a movie about a man who drove fast cars and knew things. He did not argue. He was not convinced. She was wrong. "Do you carry a gun now?" she asked on day 4 while he was tying his tie. "That's not something we discuss," he said. "That means yes," she said. He looked at her in the mirror. She went back to eating her cereal with the satisfaction of someone who had successfully gathered intelligence. The work itself settled into a rhythm. Morning briefings, movement coordination, advanced route assessment before any off-site engagement. He restructured her security details positioning at 2 events in the first 10 days, both times without being asked, both times correctly. The team adjusted without resentment. He had a kind of authority that did not require a title because it came from the obvious fact of competence. And people who were paying attention responded to it the same way, regardless of whether he was introduced first. He was beginning to understand Sloane Hale, not the CEO, the actual person underneath the $14 billion infrastructure. He understood her the way he understood terrain, from observation, from pattern, from the things that were consistent across different conditions. She worked before anyone else arrived and after everyone else left. Not as performance. It simply did not occur to her to stop. She called Owen every Sunday evening at 7 o'clock, not a video call, a phone call. She walked to the window in her office and looked at the city and talked to her son for exactly as long as the conversation needed. He had heard the end of one, passing the hallway. She was laughing at something Owen said, and it was a different laugh than the one she used in meetings, looser, the edges of it unpredictable. He noted it and moved on. She ate lunch at her desk on days when the schedule was tight, which was most days, and always the same thing. Whatever the assistant brought without being asked, which varied, and she ate it without commenting on it, which suggested she either genuinely did not care or had made the decision a long time ago that caring about lunch was a thing she could not afford. She made decisions quickly, not impulsively. There was a distinction. She moved fast because she had already done the work, already understood the variables, already stress-tested the outcome in her head before anyone else in the room had finished reading the brief. He respected that. He understood it because he did the same thing with different inputs. On the Friday evening of his second week, she passed him in the hallway at 8:45 p.m. and stopped. "You should go home," she said. "My shift runs until 9. It's 8:45, I'm aware." She looked at him. Something in her face that was not quite exasperation and not quite amusement but lived in the territory between them. "Go home, Colt," she said. He went at 9, he was home by 9:22. He sat on the edge of the sofa in the dark and listened to Ren breathing through the cracked bedroom door and thought about the flag he had placed on the calendar team file and what it meant and what it was connected to and what was coming, because something was coming. He could feel it the way he had always been able to feel it. Not mysticism, pattern recognition, the accumulation of small signals that individually meant nothing and together meant everything. He thought about Conrad Voss. He thought about the shape of a man who had operated invisibly for over a decade, who had never touched anything directly, who had built an entire existence on the principle that distance was protection. He thought about what it meant that a man like that was now pressing. Pressing meant something had changed. Either the timeline on Carver had accelerated beyond what Voss had planned for, or Voss had decided that the situation required a different approach than he had originally intended, or someone had shown him something new, shown him something that changed his calculation. Colt sat in the dark for a while longer, then he went to sleep. The gala was on a Friday in December. The Harrington Foundation held it annually. 800 guests, a hotel ballroom on the Magnificent Mile. Sloane was on the foundation's board and her attendance was not optional. It was exactly the kind of event that complicated his job in the specific way that large, public, high-density gatherings always did. Multiple entry points, a kitchen staff that changed with the catering contract, tables arranged in ways that fragmented sightlines, and 800 people moving through a space in patterns that were fundamentally unpredictable. He spent 2 days on it. He walked the venue twice the morning before, once with the event coordinator and once alone. He identified 11 positions that gave him concern and reduced the list to 4 that genuinely required adjusted coverage. He repositioned 2 members of Sloane's security detail before the event began. They moved without friction. He had been with the team long enough now that the authority was established, not by rank but by the simple fact that he had been right more often than not. He was standing near the south wall at 7:48, watching the room fill, when Reed Nolan appeared at his shoulder, not from in front, from beside. The specific arrival of a man who knew exactly how to approach someone without being seen approaching. "You look good in the suit," Nolan said. Colt did not turn. "How long have you been in the room?" he said. "About 40 minutes. I didn't see you." "No," Nolan said. "You didn't." He let that sit between them. They stood together for a moment, side by side, watching the room the way they had watched a lot of other spaces over a lot of years. The shared grammar of 2 people who had learned the same language in the same places under the same conditions. Nolan was 41 and looked it. Not badly. Just accurately. The kind of face that had seen weather and wore it without apology. He was in a suit that fit him better than it should have, for someone who described himself as a risk consultant. "She told you I recommended you," Nolan said. "She did. You're not angry, I'm listening." Nolan turned his head slightly, not toward Colt, toward the room. "There's something you need to know," he said. "About why I reached out to her. Tell me." Conrad Voss has been purchasing information about her schedule for the past 6 weeks. Not through a firm. Direct payments to 2 individuals I've identified. One of them is in building services. He paused. The other one is on her internal calendar team. The flag. The name Colt had placed a marker on 3 days into the job. "I already found the calendar source," Colt said. Nolan looked at him. The first direct look since he had appeared. "Day 3, Colt said. Something moved through Nolan's expression. Not surprise, exactly. More like the confirmation of something he had already suspected and was now certain of. "Voss has known you're here since your first week," Nolan said. "He tracked you through the Café incident, through Sloane's intervention, through the hire. He's been watching the arrangement from the beginning." Colt considered this. A man monitoring a CEO's internal calendar also monitored who she brought in to replace a security team. Of course he knew. "What does he want?" Colt said. Nolan was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. "That's the part you're not going to like," he said. Voss knew Colt's name. Not from the Café, not from Sloane's hiring. From before. Years before. From a specific set of events in a specific location that had since been removed from all accessible records. An operation that had been live and then had been cancelled, 12 hours before completion. The cancellation had come from high enough in the command chain that it had not been questioned. The unit had stood down. The target had walked. The target had been Conrad Voss. "The stand down," Colt said. His voice came out flat. "Empty of everything." "The order came from inside your command structure," Nolan said. "Someone on Voss's payroll for at least 18 months before that mission. The operation was killed from within." Colt looked at the wall across the room. The gala noise moved around him like water around something fixed. He was thinking about a hotel room, the 48 hours of preparation, the absolute clarity of the outcome, and then the call. Stand down, abort, return to base. No reason that held together under pressure. Just the order and the silence that followed it, and the feeling of a door closing on something that should have been finished. He had not known why. For years he had not known why. "Who inside my command?" he said. "I don't have that name yet," Nolan said. "Who? I'm working on it. But that's not the reason I needed to tell you this tonight." He shifted his weight slightly. "Voss is escalating around Sloane, and it's not only about the Carver deal anymore. He wants to neutralize anyone close enough to connect his current operation to the old one. And you are the only person still active who was present at that stand down." The room behind them surged with applause for something at the podium. Colt said nothing. Why are you telling me this? He finally said. Nolan looked at him directly. Because he's going to come at you through Sloane, Nolan said. And through Ren. He already has people on both of them. Ren's name, cold moved through him. Not panic. He did not panic. But the thing that lived just below where panic began. Sharper than fear. More focused. That was my condition, he said. Low absolute. Ren stays out of this, I know. Who has eyes on her right now? I put my own people outside her school on Monday, Nolan said. No one connected to Voss. She has not been approached. Colt turned and looked at him directly for the first time since the conversation had started. You put people on my daughter without telling me, he said. I did. The silence had weight. I was going to tell you tonight, Nolan said. I needed to confirm the coverage was solid before I said anything. I needed to be sure before I put it in front of you. Colt looked at him. He began building the architecture of anger, the justified, reasonable structure of it. A man making unilateral decisions about his child without consultation. But the architecture kept running into the same wall. Nolan had placed coverage on Ren before saying anything, because if he had said it first, Colt would have pulled out, would have taken her somewhere quiet and gone dark on all of it. And Nolan knew that. The outcome would have left Sloane exposed with no one who actually understood what was coming. He had made a calculation. Colt knew exactly what it felt like to make that kind of calculation, the weight of it. The cost of it. We'll talk about your methods later, he said. Yeah, Nolan said. We will. Right now, I need everything you have on Voss's current operation. People, structure, timing. I know parts of it. Tell me what you know, he told him. 35 minutes. Standing in the south corridor while the gala continued beyond the doorway. Nolan talked, and Colt listened, and the noise of 800 people moved around them like weather around a fixed point. Voss operated through layers in everything. Always had. He never touched anything directly. Never had his name on anything that could be traced back in a straight line. This was his protection and his method, and the reason he had remained invisible for as long as he had. The Carver acquisition was the closest any outside entity had come to his network in over a decade, because a full audit would reach back 11 years. His money was in those 11 years. Everything he had built, everything that required staying buried, lived in those 11 years. He could not allow the deal to close, but a direct move against Sloane was too visible, too traceable. So instead he created pressure, instability, threat. Not enough to trigger law enforcement intervention, but enough to make a person in her position decide that protecting herself was worth more than completing any single acquisition, or until the person keeping her stable was removed from the equation. He's going to come at you directly, Nolan said. I don't know exactly when or how, but he's been watching since week 1 and he knows you're the reason she hasn't moved. Good, Colt said. Nolan looked at him. Good, Colt said again. He's watching me. That means he's building assumptions about what I'll do. And if he's building assumptions, he can be wrong. Nolan went quiet. You already have something in mind, Nolan said. It was not a question, not yet. But I know where it starts. He looked back through the doorway at the gala, the ballroom, the tables, the city's philanthropic infrastructure, gathered in one place for an evening, and somewhere in the periphery of all of it, invisible money moving in invisible ways. Watching him watch it, he found Sloane across the room without difficulty. She was at a table with the mayor and 2 people he recognized from the Carver board, talking, composed, her face giving nothing away that wasn't intended. She caught his eye across the full width of the room. 2 seconds, a check-in. He gave her one small nod. She turned back to the conversation. He watched the room. He told her everything that night. Her office. 11 p.m., the building mostly empty. The cleaning crews moving through the lower floors. The executive level quiet in the way that quiet became its own presence after dark. He sat in the chair across from her desk, the one he rarely used, and laid it out the way he laid everything out. Chronologically, without inflection, precisely. Voss, the Carver network, the surveillance on her schedule, the source on her calendar team, Nolan, the stand down from 3 years ago, all of it. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. The stand down, she said. That was your operation, yes, and you never knew why it was cancelled. No, she looked at her desk. At nothing in particular. The way people looked when they were reorganizing something inside themselves before they could continue. I knew Voss was behind Carver, she said. I knew there was a history. I did not know the history included you directly. Did you know that when you hired me? She looked up. No, she said, and it was just the word. No architecture around it, no performance of sincerity, just the plain thing. I hired you because Reed said you were the best and because I needed the best. The connection to your operation is something I've only understood in the past 10 days. He looked at her. He was deciding something. He did not rush it. When you found out, he said, I was going to tell you this week, but you didn't. No. She held his gaze and did not flinch from the accountability of it. I was trying to understand the complete picture before I brought it to you, because I knew what you would do the moment I told you. What would I do? Leave. A pause. Take Ren somewhere safe and go dark, and I would lose the only person in this building who has actually made me safe. She looked down at her hands. That was a selfish calculation. I know what it was. He said nothing. I'm telling you now, she said. He sat with it. He thought about what it cost her to say it. Not the words themselves. The words were easy. He thought about what it cost a woman who had built a $14 billion operation on never letting anyone see the seams, to sit in her own office at 11 at night and say out loud that she had made a selfish calculation and she knew it. That was not a small thing. Voss is going to move soon, he said. I know, he'll use Ren indirectly. He won't touch her. He'll just make sure I understand that he can. That's his leverage. He expects it to make me pull back. And what do you do with that? He looked at her steadily. I don't leave, he said. That's the entire play. He's built this pressure campaign around one assumption that the right combination of threats will make me pull back and leave you exposed. He's wrong about what I do. She held his gaze. Who are you? She said. Not unkindly. Genuinely. He thought about the honest answer to that. Someone who stopped running about 6 weeks ago, he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her desk drawer and slid a personnel file across to him. The tab had the name he had flagged. The calendar team source. I pulled it this afternoon, she said. I've been waiting to see what you wanted to do with it. He picked up the file. Not yet, he said. We leave him in place. We let Voss keep seeing what he expects to see. That I'm managing the threat. Being careful. Keeping you contained, while we build what we actually need. He closed the file. He's made assumptions about both of us. He's going to be wrong about all of them. She nodded once. Don't be late tomorrow, she said. The board meeting is at 8. He stood, picked up his jacket. He was at the door when she said his name. Colt? He stopped, waited. I'm sorry about the stand down, she said. For what it's worth. You deserve to know what happened. He looked at the door frame. Yeah, he said. I did. He walked out. In the elevator going down, he stood with his hands in his pockets and his eyes on the descending floor numbers. He thought about 12 years. About the things taken from him that appeared nowhere in any official record. About a hotel room and a phone call and a door that had closed before it should have. He thought about Conrad Voss. Alive and invisible and operational. Moving money and buying silence and pressing pressure points with the patience of a man who had never once been made to answer for any of it. He thought about that for a long time. He pressed the lobby button. He was not angry. He had set anger down somewhere in the second year because it had a weight he couldn't carry and nowhere useful to go. What he felt instead was something more precise, purpose. Clean and specific. With an edge to it, he recognized it the way you recognized something that had always been yours, that had been sitting in a drawer waiting. Outside, the city was cold and lit and ongoing. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment and pulled out his phone and sent one text to the neighbor who stayed with Ren on late evenings. All good. Home in 30, the reply came in 4 seconds. She's asleep. Left a light on for you. He put the phone away. He walked to his truck. He drove home through empty December streets and thought about a man who had been invisible for too long and had started to believe that invisible meant untouchable. It didn't. Invisible just meant you hadn't been found yet. Colt had been found, and he was done with the wrong side of that equation. The photograph arrived on a Thursday. The gala had been on a Friday. The photograph arrived the following Thursday morning, 6 days later, slipped into an unmarked envelope at the building's front desk. His name on the outside in block letters. No return address, nothing inside except the photograph, Ren, standing in the schoolyard during recess, yellow coat. She was facing away from the camera, looking at something across the yard, her small hands in her pockets, entirely unaware. The angle was close. Whoever took it had been standing at the fence line, 15 feet from her, maybe less. Colt looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he folded it once, put it in his jacket pocket, and went back to work. He did not tell Sloane. Not yet. He finished the morning, attended the 10 o'clock legal briefing on the Carver acquisition timeline, stood at the back of the room and watched the people at the table, and thought about proximity and distance and the specific geometry of what was being communicated to him. Not a threat with words, a threat with a fact. Someone had been 15 feet from his daughter and had wanted him to know it. He picked Ren up at 5:45. She told him about a girl in her class named Delia who had brought a hamster for show and tell. The hamster had escaped. It took the entire class 17 minutes to catch it. The hamster appeared unharmed but was, in Ren's professional assessment, extremely stressed. He listened to every word. He made dinner, pasta. The small shell kind she preferred, with butter and parmesan in the ratio he had calibrated across 2 years of enthusiastic versus lukewarm responses to slightly different versions of the same meal. He bathed her, read to her, sat on the edge of her bed until her breathing deepened and her hands went loose on the blanket, and the small furrow between her brows that appeared when she was fighting sleep finally smoothed out. He sat in the kitchen. He took the photograph out of his pocket and put it on the table. He looked at it 15 feet. 12 seconds to close that distance. Maybe 8 if the person moved with intent. Ren would not have seen it coming. She was looking across the yard, thinking about Delia's hamster or whatever, occupied the front of a 6-year-old's attention on a Thursday recess, and 15 feet was nothing. 8 seconds was nothing. The schoolyard had a fence, but a fence was not a wall, and the whole point of the photograph was not the image itself. The point was what they had chosen not to do instead. He sat with that. Then he picked up his phone and called Nolan. 2 rings. "I was wondering when you'd call," Nolan said. "How long have you known about the photograph?" A pause. "Short. Honest 2 days," Nolan said. "I've had someone on the fence line since Monday. I didn't know he'd send it to you directly. That changes the timeline. He's escalating, he's communicating. He wants you to know he can reach her. He's not going to. Not yet. Not yet is not a number I work with." Silence on the line. "He wants a meeting," Nolan said. "He reached out to me yesterday. Direct contact. He wants to talk to you. No intermediaries, no team. He said he has a proposal." Colt looked at the photograph on the table. "Where?" he said. "He'll send the location if you agree to come." "When?" "Tomorrow night." He thought about it. The calculation was not complicated. He knew what Voss wanted. He understood the shape of the trap, and he understood what Voss believed lived inside him. The precise pressure point that had been located and was now being pressed with the patience of a man who had done this before and knew how it ended. Ren. That was the lever. That had always been the lever. "Tell him yes," Colt said. "Colt, tell him yes. And then I need something from you." "What?" "I need Ren somewhere Voss has no map to. Not her school, not the neighbor. Somewhere completely outside his picture of my life." A pause. "I have a cousin in Evanston," Nolan said. "Terry. She has no connection to anything in this. Voss wouldn't have her name. Does Ren know her? They've met twice. She has a dog." Colt thought about this. "Ren and a dog in Evanston. Set it up," he said. "Tomorrow morning. Tell her it's a sleepover. Nothing else. And you, I'll be at the meeting. And after we'll see," he said. He hung up. He looked at the photograph one more time. Then he took it to the kitchen sink. He burned it with the lighter from the utility drawer and watched the paper curl and blacken and reduce itself to ash. He ran the water over what was left. He went to bed. He did not sleep for a long time. But he was still there in the morning, which was the only thing that ever mattered. He told Ren about the sleepover over breakfast. She was immediately suspicious. "Why?" she said. "Because it'll be fun. It's a school night Friday. No school Saturday." She considered this. Her eyes, which missed very little, doing their quiet work. "Is it because of your job?" she said. "It's because you'll have fun and there's a dog." "What kind?" "Big one." "Does it have a name?" "Biscuit," he said. "A guess." He had no information about the dog beyond its existence. He would manage the discrepancy later. She looked at him for a long moment, then, "Okay," he exhaled. He dropped her at school at 7:50. Watched her walk through the front doors, yellow coat, small shoulders, head already turning toward the room and whatever Delia's latest contribution to first-grade chaos was going to be. He sat in the truck for a moment after she disappeared. Just a moment, then he drove to the office. He told Sloane at 8:30. He sat down across from her desk, which he had not done since the first morning. He had stood for most of their conversations. Sitting felt like settling, and he did not settle. He sat now. He put the facts in front of her in order. The photograph, the meeting request, the Evanston arrangement for Wren, what he intended to do that evening and why, and what he needed from her in the hours before it. She listened without moving. When he finished, she said, "You should have told me about the photograph yesterday." "Yes," he said. "Why didn't you?" He thought about the honest answer. "I needed one night to just be her father," he said. "Before I had to be anything else." Sloane looked at him. She did not say anything for a moment. She looked at her hands. She looked up. "What do you need from me?" she said. "Gareth Dunn." A pause. "He's in county lockup," she said, awaiting trial. "His attorney has been reaching out to my legal team about a possible settlement. I don't want a settlement. I want access." He leaned forward. Dunn worked inside Carver Financial for 9 years. He managed acquisitions, which means he managed the accounts, which means he knows exactly where Voss's money lives inside that structure and how it moves. Sloane was quiet. "He's frightened," she said. "His attorney has communicated it without saying it directly. Not of prison. Of Voss." "Good," Colt said. "Fear means he's already running the math. He knows Voss cannot allow him to testify, which means he knows what happens to him if he doesn't find a better option before trial. Protective custody," Sloane said slowly. "Federal, not county, in exchange for cooperation. You've been feeding the Financial Crimes Unit documentation on Carver for weeks. You have the relationship. Call them today. Tell them Dunn is ready to talk and that we need it moving fast." He held her gaze. "If this goes the way I expect tonight, Voss needs to walk into that meeting already out of options. He just doesn't know it yet." She picked up her phone. She made the call in front of him. No privacy, no hesitation. She laid the situation out to the deputy director on the other end in under 5 minutes, with the precision of someone who never walked into a room doubting her right to be there. He watched her work. There was something in it that moved through him quietly. Not admiration in the way the word usually meant. Something closer to recognition. The thing you felt watching someone operate at the exact ceiling of what they were built for. She hung up. "They'll have him transferred to a federal facility this afternoon," she said. "An agent will make contact by 5, he nodded. "Now tell me about tonight," she said. "No," she looked at him. "Sloane," he said her name without the professional distance he usually kept in it. "If you know the location, you'll want coverage there. And if there's coverage, Voss will know before I walk in. He's agreeing to this meeting because he believes I'm coming alone and cornered." He paused. "I need him to believe that exactly up until the moment he's wrong." She held his gaze for a long moment. "And if something goes wrong," she said, "Nolan will be close. That's not the same as okay." "No," he said. "It isn't." She was quiet. "Call me when it's done," she said. "I will." He stood. Picked up his jacket from the chair back. "Colt." He turned this time, all the way. She was looking at him with an expression he had not seen from her before. Not the CEO, not the woman who ran every room she entered. Just the woman. The one who had rebuilt something from the wreckage of one life and was still, after all of it, standing. "Be careful," she said. "Not for the contract." For Wren, he held her gaze for a moment. "Those have always been the same thing," he said. He walked out. The location arrived at 4 p.m. a restaurant in the West Loop. Private dining room, 8 o'clock. Voss's message through Nolan was plain. Come alone, no recording equipment, no team. He would know if Colt deviated from this. He probably would. Colt dressed carefully. Dark suit. No tie. He checked himself in the bathroom mirror and thought about the 12 years he had spent in clothing designed to disappear into specific backgrounds, and about how strange it still was to disappear into rooms like this one, rooms with linen napkins and low lighting, instead of the other kinds. He drove Wren to Evanston himself. Nolan's cousin Terry was a woman in her early 50s, warm in the immediate, uncomplicated way of someone who had never found warmth difficult. She came to the door before they knocked. The dog appeared behind her knee. It was enormous. It was not named Biscuit. It was named Chief. Wren looked up at it with wide eyes, and then looked at Colt with an expression that occupied the exact territory between betrayal and wonder. "You said Biscuit," she said. "I was close," he said. Chief lowered his enormous head and placed his chin on Wren's shoulder with the gentleness of a large animal that had learned its own size. Wren made a sound he had never heard from her before. Short, high, involuntary. Pure delight, unedited. She turned to Terry with complete focus. "Does he sleep inside?" Wren said. "On the bed," Terry said. Every night Wren looked at her father. Her expression communicated everything and required no translation. He crouched down to her level. She looked at him the way she always did. Straight, patient. Already knowing something was in the air without knowing its shape. "Baba, hey, look at me." She looked at him. "I need to do something tonight. And then tomorrow morning I'm going to come get you, and we're going to get breakfast. Anywhere you want, meridian roast, wherever you choose." She studied him, the internal process. The thing that happened behind those dark eyes before she arrived at a conclusion. "Is it a little dangerous?" she said. He had made the decision when she was 3 years old. He did not lie to his daughter. He had held to it through every hard moment it created. "A little," he said. She was quiet for a beat. Then she put her arms around his neck and held on. Small arms, her specific weight, solid and known. "Be careful," she said, into his shoulder. The same words Sloane had said. Same syllables, different frequency. Both of them landing in parts of his chest. "I will," he said. He held her for a moment beyond what was necessary. Then he set her down. "Go find out where Chief sleeps," he said. She went. She did not look back. That was her version of being brave, and he recognized it because it was his too, and he let her have it without comment. He thanked Terry. Drove back into the city. The highway was bright and full of people heading toward ordinary Friday evenings, ordinary restaurants, ordinary hours that would become ordinary memories. He drove through all of it. He let his mind go still. That was the practice. Before anything that mattered, empty out. Let the stillness arrive. Let it settle into the spaces where anxiety tried to establish itself. By the time in the West Loop appeared through the windshield, he was entirely composed, still like a held breath, still like a thing precisely on the edge of becoming. The restaurant was called Dark Wood Paneling. Ambient light calibrated low. The kind of place that seated 40 people and had the hush of a library about it. He arrived at 7:52 and was shown to the private room in the back without being asked his name, which confirmed they had been watching before he walked through the door. He noted 2 men in the main room at separate tables, not eating, positioned. He logged them and continued. The private room was small, 1 table, 2 chairs, an open bottle of wine untouched. A man seated in the far chair with his hands folded on the table in the practiced posture of someone who had spent decades learning how to appear unthreatening. Conrad Voss, 58 years old. Lean with the leanness of sustained self-discipline rather than deprivation. Silver hair kept short. A very calm face and eyes the color of shallow water, pale and flat, the depth beneath them entirely invisible from the surface. A suit that had been made for his body specifically. He did not stand when Colt entered. Colt sat, Mr. Mercer, Voss said. His voice was quieter than expected. The voice of a man who had learned long ago that volume belonged to people who were not sure they would be listened to. "Thank you for coming. You made a compelling invitation," Colt said. Voss looked at him with the focused attention of someone conducting an assessment and not bothering to conceal that they were doing it. "You're not what I expected," Voss said. "People say that. The photographs made you look younger." "What photographs?" Voss allowed a small, controlled expression that did not reach his eyes. "I've been aware of you for some time," he said. "Longer than you realize, I know," Colt said. The expression adjusted, slightly, recalibrated. "Then you know why I asked for this meeting," Voss said. "Tell me anyway." Voss poured wine into both glasses. Colt did not touch his. "I want you to step back from Sloane Hale," Voss said. "Terminate the arrangement. Withdraw from her building and her operations this week. And in exchange, you and your daughter continue your lives without any contact from me or anyone connected to me. That is not a small offer, Mr. Mercer. I want you to understand precisely what I'm extending." Colt looked at him. He looked at the man sitting across the table. The specific man, the one who had given the order that made a phone ring in a hotel room 3 years ago. The one who had bought the information, who had paid someone inside the command structure, who had walked away from something that should have ended him because of a chain of transactions that had nothing to do with justice or accountability or any principle at all. He had expected something when he finally saw the face. Some version of the feeling he had carried about the stand-down. Something with heat and weight that wanted to move. What he felt instead was clarity, clean and precise and completely sufficient. "I have a question," Colt said. "Of course, the stand-down. Was it money or leverage?" Voss was quiet for a moment. "A real moment, not a performed one." "Does it matter? To me it does." "Why? Because I want to understand how it actually worked," Colt said. "Not to relitigate it. To understand it." Voss considered him. Long enough to be genuine consideration rather than performance. Leverage, he said finally. I don't purchase military personnel as a practice. The exposure is too significant. But a man with a specific problem and a specific vulnerability is a different conversation. What was his problem? That's not something I'll share. Fair enough. Voss reached into the breast pocket of his jacket and removed a slim folder. He placed it on the table between them and pushed it toward Colt. This contains the original documentation of the stand-down order, Voss said. The communication chain. The name of the individual inside your command structure who facilitated it. He pushed it another inch forward. I'm giving this to you, not as leverage, as a gesture of good faith. You have a right to know who it was. Colt looked at the folder. He did not touch it. Voss watched him. You're not going to open it, Voss said. No. Why? Colt looked up from the folder to the pale, flat eyes across the table. Because I carried that question for 3 years, he said. And somewhere in the past 6 weeks I put it down. He looked at the folder between them. The name inside doesn't change anything I've already decided. It doesn't change what I'm going to do tonight. It doesn't change what happened to me or what I did with it after. He paused. I don't need it anymore. Voss was quiet. Something moved through his expression. Not fear, not anger. Something older than either of those things. Something that looked like the first moment a man understood that the leverage he had built his entire play around had ceased to function. You're not going to step back, Voss said. No, then you understand what comes next. I do, Colt said. Which is why I want to tell you something before we're finished here. Voss waited. Gareth Dunn, Colt said. The name landed in the room like a change in air pressure. Voss's face did not visibly change, but something behind it did. Something very small and very fast, like a door closing in a room far away. He's been in federal custody since 4 o'clock this afternoon, Colt said. Transferred from county. He's cooperating with the Financial Crimes Unit in exchange for protective custody and sentencing consideration. He started talking at 5, a pause. All of it, the account structures, the fund movement, the full 11-year architecture, the silence that followed was complete. Voss looked at the table, he looked at his hands, he looked at the wine glass he had poured and not touched. You arranged this before you came here, Voss said. Quiet, almost to himself. I arranged it yesterday morning, Colt said. The meeting tonight was to confirm you heard it from me directly. Professional courtesy, professional. The word came out hollowed of whatever he had intended it to carry. You're done, Colt said. Not with satisfaction, not with heat, just with the flatness of a fact. Not because I outmaneuvered you. Because Dunn was already afraid of you, and we gave him a better option. That's all it took. He straightened in the chair. The FBI will be in contact with your attorneys in the next 48 hours. I'd suggest you use the time available. Voss said nothing. The pale eyes had gone somewhere interior. Running calculations on a board that had just been cleared. Colt stood. He picked up his jacket. He looked at the folder on the table between the 2 empty chairs. He left it there. The 2 men in the main room tracked him as he walked out. He felt them without looking. He moved through the restaurant and through the front door and onto the sidewalk, and the December cold arrived immediately, sharp and definitive. He stood for a moment. His phone buzzed. Nolan answered. How did it go? Nolan said. Dunn's cooperation is confirmed, and Voss knows it, I heard. I meant the other part. Colt looked up at the sky. No stars. The cloud cover had come in low and complete. He had the file, Colt said. The stand-down documentation. The name, a pause. Did you take it? Nolan said. No, a longer pause. Okay, Nolan said. Very quietly. Like something had been confirmed that he had hoped for but not assumed. I need you to contact your FBI connection, Colt said. Make sure the Voss situation is moving. Tonight already did. 40 minutes ago, good, a beat of quiet on the line. Colt, yeah, you good. He thought about the honest answer to that. He thought about a hotel room 3 years ago and a phone call and a door, closing on something that should have ended differently. He thought about carrying the weight of that unanswered question across 2 years of pipe work and Tuesday mornings and bills with Claire's name on them. He thought about the folder on the table in a private dining room in the West Loop and walking away from it without picking it up. He thought about Wren asleep right now in Evanston with an enormous dog named Chief taking up most of the bed. Yeah, he said. I'm good, then go home and sleep. Tomorrow, Colt said. What's tomorrow? Breakfast. Wherever she wants. He hung up. He stood on the sidewalk for another moment. He thought about Voss sitting alone in that private room right now. The folder still on the table, the wine still untouched, running the numbers on a situation that no longer had a favorable outcome regardless of how he arranged the variables. The invisible man, finally visible, Colt walked to his truck. He drove home through empty December streets with the heat running and the radio off. He let the city move around him, the stoplights cycling, the late-night foot traffic, people heading home from Friday dinners, couples walking close against the cold. He parked, went inside. He sat on the edge of the sofa for a few minutes in the dark and let the stillness of the apartment settle around him, the particular quiet of a space without Wren in it, which always felt slightly wrong, like a room with one lamp off. He went to sleep. He slept. Not the vigilant half-sleep he had lived in for 2 years, the kind where some part of his nervous system stayed on watch, even in the dark. The real version. The kind that arrived when the body finally believed it was safe to stop listening. He woke at 6:43, lay still for 3 minutes, got up. He called Sloane from the kitchen while the coffee brewed. She answered on the second ring, which meant she had already been awake, which was not a surprise. "It's done," he said, a pause. "Short then, are you all right?" "Yes, and Voss expects a call from his attorneys in the next day or two." He poured coffee. "Dunn's cooperation is solid. The Financial Crimes Unit has everything they need from Sloane's documentation, plus what Dunn provided last night. The case is built, and the meeting, he made his offer. I declined. He found out about Dunn while I was sitting across from him." Another pause. "He brought the file," she said. "Not a question," Nolan had told her. "That was fine. He did. You left it." "I did." She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted into something without the professional layer over it. "How does that feel?" she said. He thought about it. "Like putting something down that I forgot I was still holding," he said. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. "I'm going to get Wren," he said. "She's in Evanston, I know." Nolan told me. A pause. "Colt, yeah, breakfast," she said. "Meridian roast. I'll be there." He started to say something about how she didn't have to, that he would call her later, that she should rest. He got as far as drawing the breath. "I'll be there," she said again. He let the breath go. 9 o'clock, he said. He drove to Evanston in the grey December morning with the heat running and the radio on low, something without lyrics, just sound and rhythm to fill the space. He pulled up to Terry's house at 7:20. Before he could knock, the door opened, Wren still in pajamas, hair entirely catastrophic. Chief behind her, tail moving with an enthusiasm that seemed outsized for the hour. She looked at him. "You're here," she said. "I said I would be." She stepped out onto the porch in her socks, which was a decision that ignored the temperature in the complete way. Only a 6-year-old who could ignore it. She grabbed his hand and pulled him inside because there was something important he needed to see, which turned out to be a drawing she had done the night before of Chief. Ambitious in scale and impressionistic in its relationship to the actual dog's proportions, which she was very proud of. He held it and looked at it with appropriate gravity. "This is good," he said. "I know," she said. "It looks just like him." Chief from across the room regarded neither of them. He was focused on a bird outside the window with the deep professional commitment of an animal that had given up on the drawing entirely. Terry made coffee. He drank it standing at the counter while Wren packed her bag with the methodical thoroughness of someone who had learned early that the packing step mattered and could not be rushed. She folded things. She checked the side pocket twice. He thanked Terry. They drove back. Wren held the Chief drawing on her lap the whole way and looked out the window at the city assembling itself around them as they came back in from the north. "Baba, yeah, you said it was a little dangerous." Last night, he kept his eyes on the road. "I know what I said. Is it done now?" He thought about Voss in that private room. The folder on the table, the FBI moving, Gareth Dunn in federal custody, talking. The 11-year architecture beginning to come apart at the joints the way structures did when the thing holding them together was finally removed. "Yes," he said. "It's done." She nodded once. The nod of someone confirming something they had already decided to believe before they asked. They parked. Walked the 2 blocks. He held her hand. The morning was cold and clear, the cloud cover from the night before gone, the winter sun low and thin but present. He pulled open the door of Meridian Roast, and the warmth arrived, the coffee smell, the steamer, the low ambient sound of a room that was full and moving. He found the booth, Claire's booth. The corner one with the cracked leather seat that nobody had ever gotten around to replacing. He let Ren slide in first, and she pressed her face against the window glass immediately, her breath fogging it, one finger tracing something in the fog. Probably chief, probably a horse, possibly both at once. He flagged down the barista. 2 hot chocolates, medium marshmallows, a black coffee, a blueberry muffin. He unwrapped the muffin and began pulling it apart. Blueberries first, Ren said, without turning from the window. I know, he said. She turned and looked at him with her whole face. Baba, yeah, are you happy? The question came the way her questions always came, direct and without preparation, no approach from the side. She had her father's way of walking straight into the thing. He looked at her. He thought about the honest answer. He thought about the coin in the kitchen drawer at home, sitting where he had placed it the night of the very first Tuesday, the night he had called Sloane back and said yes. He had not moved it since, not because he had forgotten it was there, because it had stopped feeling like something he was carrying and started feeling like something that had simply ended, the way things ended when they were finally finished. He thought about the folder on the table in the West Loop. He had left it there and he had walked away from it, and at no point in the drive home had he felt the need to go back. That was new. That was something he had not been able to say about very many things in a long time. He thought about Sloane Hale. Right now, at a table near the window of this same room. He had not looked yet. He would. But he let himself stay with the thought for a moment before the looking. The woman who had built an empire from nothing and had still, in the middle of all of it, sat in her car at 11 o'clock on a December night and said plainly, "That was a selfish calculation and I know it." Who made the call in front of him without retreating to her office first. Who had said be careful not for the contract but for Ren, and had understood without being told that those had always been the same thing. He thought about this morning. The kitchen at 6:43, the coffee brewing, the apartment quiet in the particular way it was quiet when Ren was somewhere else, and the quiet was the wrong shape. Standing at the counter and feeling the specific absence of the weight he had carried. For so long he had stopped noticing it was there, gone, not because the losses had been undone. Not because the years had been returned to him or the stand-down had been answered in the way it deserved, or Claire's name had been removed from the unpaid envelopes, or any of the things that had broken had been reassembled into their original forms. Gone because he had put them down, and then he had stayed in the city, stayed in the apartment, stayed in the booth on Tuesday mornings. Stayed in the building on Michigan Avenue with its 41st floor windows and its 11 people with calendar access and its CEO, who drank coffee in both hands and called her son at 7 on Sundays, and had the real laugh that only arrived when she wasn't thinking about who was watching. Happy was not precisely the right word for it, but it was in the same neighborhood. Close enough to see from here, and for a man who had spent 2 years unsure he would ever live in that neighborhood again, close enough to see was more than sufficient. Yeah, he said. I am. Ren looked at him. She looked at him with the dark, patient eyes that had always been the clearest thing in any room he had ever been in. The eyes that found him first. Always first, me too, she said. She selected her first blueberry with the precision of a small scientist maintaining a rigorous protocol. He looked up. Sloane was at the window table. Not the corner booth, not anywhere strategic. Just the table with the morning light coming through it, pale and winter-thin, and making everything it touched look like something on the edge of a memory. She had a coffee in front of her and was not looking at her phone. She was looking at the street. At the ordinary Friday morning unfolding on the other side of the glass. She looked up at the same moment he looked over. 2 seconds. Across the room. The same kind of 2 seconds they had exchanged at the gala, the check-in, the confirmation. Except that what was being confirmed now was something different from what that had been. She stood, brought her coffee, came to the booth. She stopped at the edge of it. Ren looked up from her blueberry operation. You came, Ren said, with the tone of someone for whom this settled something important. I said I would, Sloane said. Ren considered this. Then she slid to the inside of the booth to make room. With the decisive generosity of a person who had made up her mind about someone and was done deliberating. Sloane sat. She looked at the table, at the muffin carefully disassembled, at the lineup of blueberries Ren had arranged in a row before eating them, which was new, which was apparently today's protocol adjustment. That's very organized, Sloane said. You have to eat the small ones first, Ren said, then the big ones. That's the correct order. I didn't know that. Most people don't, Ren said, with the patience of someone accustomed to educating the uninformed. Sloane looked at Colt. He looked back at her. He said nothing. She said nothing. There was nothing that needed saying, which was its own kind of thing, the particular ease of two people who had stopped needing to fill the space between them with anything other than what was actually there. Sloane reached out and took a piece of the muffin without asking. He noticed. He did not comment. She ate it. Looked out the window, looked back at the table. The board has scheduled the Carver closing for Tuesday, she said. Quiet, professional adjacent, but not quite. The audit team goes in Wednesday morning, I know, he said. I saw the briefing. After that, the legal exposure on Voss's end accelerates significantly. I know that, too. You're not concerned, she said. No. Why? Because he's nothing left to press, Colt said. He used his leverage. It didn't work. Done is talking. The documentation is with the right people. All he has now is attorneys and time, and both of those are running in the wrong direction for him. She held his gaze, something in her expression that was not the CEO, not the woman who ran the room, just the actual person who had been inside all of that for a long time and was beginning to understand what it felt like to have it be over. It's really done, she said. It's really done, he said. She exhaled, short, like something released. Ren looked between them with the bright attention of a child who had sensed something important was happening in the conversation and was trying to locate its edges. Are you going to cry? Ren asked Sloane, with genuine and unprejudiced curiosity. No, Sloane said. My Baba cries sometimes, Ren said. When we watch the movie with the dog, Ren, Colt said. He does, she said to Sloane. Confidential. He thinks I'm asleep, but I'm not. Sloane looked at Colt. He looked at the ceiling. She laughed. The real one. Not the version she used in conference rooms or at board dinners, not the one calibrated to communicate warmth without revealing anything. The actual laugh, unguarded, arriving before she could decide whether to allow it, with its unpredictable edges and its complete absence of professionalism. It lasted about 5 seconds. It changed something in the room, or it changed his understanding of the room, which was the same thing. He looked at her. She looked at him. Both of them understanding in the quiet way things were understood before they were spoken, that this particular booth on a particular December morning was not a thing that arrived twice in a life. That the combination of a 6-year-old conducting a rigorous blueberry protocol, and a woman laughing the version of herself she reserved for no one, and a man who had finally genuinely put something down, was not a configuration that repeated. You had to notice it when it came. He noticed it. He picked up his coffee. Outside the window, the city moved at its own pace. People in coats moving fast, breath visible in the cold air, a delivery truck blocking the bike lane. A man walking a dog that was approximately the size of Chief, and a woman next to him saying something that made him throw his head back and laugh at the sky. All of it indifferent to the particular weight of a Friday morning in December. All of it ongoing. Ren finished her blueberries in the correct order and began on the muffin itself. Sloane wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. Colt sat in Claire's booth, in the cracked leather seat that nobody had ever gotten round to replacing, in the place that had always held her shape. And he thought about how a thing could hold two meanings at once without either of them being wrong. How a table could be a place where you kept someone, and also a place where you let yourself be found. He had spent 2 years coming here to hold on. This morning he was here for something else. He was here because it was Tuesday, because the hot chocolate came with medium marshmallows, because his daughter was eating blueberries in the correct order and had opinions about the scientific basis of that order, because the woman across from him had shown up at 9 o'clock on a December morning without being asked twice, and was holding her coffee in both hands and had laughed the real version of her laugh and was still sitting there, because he was present, accounted for, not disappeared, not carrying the weight of a locked drawer or an unanswered phone call, or a folder left on a table in a private room where the wine was never touched. Just here, right here, and that finally, after all of it, was enough.